Hello, my friends. Happy weekend. I hope your weekend is off to a fantastic start. It is, of course, Margarete Miller Collage Day. And today I don't so much have a story, but a memory for you for the collage. So let's get into it and look at our prompts. So I'm working on week 30. Maybe I might catch up this weekend. I don't know. Possibly not. We'll see how it goes. But week 30 anyway, something associated with a specific place you've visited. So I'm going with this wonderful image of the Sydney Opera House from Sydney, Australia. I haven't actually been to the Opera House itself, but I've been to Australia, and I have been past the Opera House. So this is out of a really cool Spanish book on beautiful places around the world. So I'm covering over a bit of Ayers Rock, also from Australia. So I'm going to start just by laying this down. So your first clue to the memory is that it involves Australia as a place that I've visited. And when I first looked at all these prompts, I was like, I can't see a story here. And then one thing led to another, and I realized that they were all leading me down memory lane, which is pretty cool too. It's nice to actually inject a little bit of myself into it and tell you a little bit of one of my memories, or a collection of memories, I guess, about one particular trip. So I will kind of reveal as we go along, because pretty much the prompts as they are on the prompt list are this, I think, the same order that I'm going to be laying them down, so it'll kind of all unfold naturally. So this is going right at the top a little bit. Now I have raised the camera slightly to try and get more of the book in frame, but I seem to just not be able to get the whole thing in frame, so I do apologize that you're probably missing a little bit at the top and bottom, but hopefully you'll kind of see everything, the main action happening in the middle. Okay, something ornate. So let's go over the Sydney bit first. So back in 2019, my hubby and I got to go on a cruise, and we left from Sydney and arrived back in Sydney. So we had to fly from Australia to New Zealand, New Zealand to Australia first, so we could catch the ship. And so we arrived in Australia the same day that the ship was leaving, so we had no overnighters in Sydney. But as we sailed out of the harbour, we went right past the Sydney Opera House. So hubby and I took lots of photos from the deck of the ship of the Opera House. It was during the day though. This is more like a sunset, but we were during the day. So for something ornate, I have a really bad photo here. This is from the cruise ship. It's one of the corridors that's on the outside of the ship, so there's the windows. I'll lift it up, but you probably can't really see. So there's windows along here to look out over the sea. There's all these beautiful leather armchairs, and underneath them the tiles are very decorative. Sad that they're mostly covered by the chairs actually, but they still look pretty cool. You can see peeps of them. There's big huge images down this wall that are all backlit, and the ornate bit that I particularly wanted in this photo is the beams across the ceiling are very carved and decorative, and then there's stained glass light shades in between each set of beams. And that's my something ornate, but really the whole thing is ornate. And the photo is actually crooked, so I tried to straighten it up when I printed it out, and then realized, well, I'll just be straightening it when I work with it for the collage, so there was no point altering it on my computer first. So I'm just using the borders of the paper to kind of straighten it up a bit, because it was very crookedly taken. Maybe we were sideways on the water or something, you know, on an angle, or going through a wave or something at the time. But man, those ships are so big that you don't really feel that sort of movement very much, unless it's very bad seas. So we went with Carnival, was the cruise line that we went with. First time on Carnival. I've been on 2 cruises. So I've been with P&O and then this time with Carnival. And it was my hubby's first cruise. So that was super fun, sharing that adventure. So I'm just going to kind of place it up there in the sky. I don't know why, it just fits there. So that's where I'm putting it. So that's something ornate, was the detail in the cruise ship. I was actually looking for a photo I took in the dining room where there was this beautiful carved archway over the windows at the back of the ship. But I found this photo first and thought, that'll do. I can't spend all day looking for the photo that I want, and it might not even be on my computer. And the phone I had back then was a not as good as the one I've got now, so the photos weren't great. Weren't great at all. Okay, so that's something ornate. Textured paper. I have here a bit of brown paper bag. It's actually a pharmacy bag. It is not the bag that I had on the cruise. So there's a bit of a story behind that. There was a lucky dip, or not a lucky dip, a lucky draw during the cruise. So I think you had to purchase something. With every purchase you got like a raffle ticket, a ticket into a prize draw at the end of the cruise, and they all went into a big glass bin in one of the shops. Didn't matter which shop you shopped at, you get tickets, and you took it to this particular shop and put them in the bin, and then they were drawn on the very last morning as we were coming back into Australia, into Sydney. It was drawn. And a few days before the end of the cruise, I went to them and says, what do you do with all the tickets at the end of the cruise? And they're like, well, we throw them out. And I was like, just the little tickets, and they're all red. And I asked, and I says, do you think I could have them? Like, would that be okay if I had them at the end of the cruise, if you're only going to throw them out? And so they said, well, can't see a problem with that, but we need to run it through the channels and check that it's, it's all good. And so that was fine. We went back the next day and they says, yep, it's all good. Pop back on the day before you disembark back into Sydney and pick them up. So we did that, and there was like hundreds of these tickets in a brown paper bag. So that's my textured paper, the brown paper bag, to represent those tickets that I was given. Now, I can't actually find them. When I had my surgery last year and hubby had to move everything to allow wheelchair access around the house, he's popped them somewhere. One day I'll re-find them, because I would like to actually use some of those tickets. I used very few at the beginning, and then they've kind of just been sidelined. So that's where that fits into my memory. A flower or plant, I wanted a tropical flower because we sailed round New Caledonia, Fiji and Vanuatu. And I would have liked to include a tropical flower that's representative of those islands. I could not find one, unfortunately. So I've gone with this Banksia image. Banksia is a plant that's found in Australia. So that's going to be the flower or plant, which is both. It's both a plant and a flower. We do have them here in New Zealand, but they're not native here. I don't even know if they're native to Australia. I think they are, but I'm not positive. Any Australians watching? Selena, you'd probably be able to just confirm for me that they are native to Australia. I think not just Australia. I think they are in other countries. I believe maybe Africa. But again, I'm not positive. So is there anyone in Africa watching? Maybe you'll be able to confirm for me. I could Google it, but why Google when I can ask you guys? I'm sure you'll help a girl out. Right, just managed to get glue smeared there. Okay, so that's our Banksia for our plant or flower. So while not that I remember, don't specifically seeing any Banksia on the short trip from the airport to the harbour, but they certainly remind me of this whole trip because they're Australian. Okay, a clothing tag. A fun bit of here. On the second to last day, or the last day before we came into harbour, they were having a sale on their clothing. So hubby bought us some t-shirts, and I went through my clothing labels. I did not expect to find one off the actual one of the t-shirts, and you know what, I found one off one of my t-shirts, and the size is just like, makes me cringe. I wear this t-shirt now, but it's really super huge on me. I have lost a lot of weight since this t-shirt was bought, and I was kind of like, oh, I would just want to cover up that size. But I thought, hey, it's actually a good way to remember how far I've come. So I am cringing, but leaving the size on there. So if you can read it, that's fine, because I'm no longer that size. And so that's Carnival, the branded t-shirts. And it's got a some sort of quote about cruising on it, and you know, it's deep blue, navy blue it says, but I wouldn't call it navy. Yeah, it's cool. Okay, so that is a clothing tag, and the bonus is a sewing stitch, real, drawn or stamped. Now I'm just going to use stamped, and I've got my stitch stamp here. Believe it or not, there is a way that this fits into my memories. Rather unfortunate way, really. Beautiful dining room, the Empire dining room that we had our dinner in every night. Oops, I just dipped my fingers in the ink. I don't want really to get that anywhere else. Just wipe that off. And we would always dress up, you know, dress nicely for dinner, because there is a dress code for dinner on cruise ships generally. And I was wearing a skirt that used to be my mum's, and really pretty, red, black and white, and put it on, and something happened, and I didn't think about, while I was still in our cabin, something happened, and I didn't kind of realize or think about it. I thought, oh, I don't know what that was, and then forgot about it. Went out for dinner, that was fine. Come back to our cabin after dinner and changed in something more comfortable, and realized I'd actually torn down the seam at the back of my skirt, and I'd spent all that time walking backwards and forwards and at dinner with the back of my skirt torn and flapping open. Fortunately, it was lined, so it was only the outer layer that was torn, and the black liner was still intact and fine and keeping my modesty. So probably no one noticed, but man, I just, as soon as I realized, I flamed red, because I was like, oh my goodness. So the stitching represents the black stitching where it tore while I was, or even before I got to dinner. I'm just going to put a bit down the side here, because why not? And there's a break in the middle because that's where it tore. Yeah, so embarrassing, but okay, you know, it wasn't the end of the world, but it's certainly part of my memory. And I went to wear it again, months later. I went to put it on, and then kind of looked at myself in the mirror, and you know, did turn sideways as you do to kind of look how it's looking, and then noticed that it was ripped, and it was like, ah, oh, that's right. It ripped, and I haven't repaired it. I probably won't, to be honest. I might just use it as fabric for journals. But yeah, anyway, that is my memory. We went out from Sydney, we came back to Sydney, and when we came back to Sydney, actually the Banksia does kind of fit in the memories, because before we got back to Australia is when they were having huge bushfires, and they were all around Sydney. And so when we sailed back into Sydney, it was yellow. The sky was yellow, and we had amazing sunsets for a couple of days out from Sydney because of the smoke in the air. So the Banksia is found in native bush as well as gardens and things. So the Banksia would have, would have been damaged. A lot of Banksias would have been lost and damaged in that process. So it does fit into the memories, because the fires is a detail I often forget, and then all of a sudden I realize, oh, that's right, there were fires, really, really bad fires at that time. You know, a lot of people lost houses and all sorts of things. But not to put a downer on this, ripped skirt, you know, whatever. It was a great cruise. It was not quite 2 weeks long, just short of 2 weeks, and it was fantastic. I would really love to go on another one. Also, the timing we went on this, we went in November 2019, and then it wasn't long before New Zealand went into its first full lockdown for COVID at the beginning of 2020. So, because originally we had planned or thought that maybe we'd go in March 2020 instead of 2019. We're so glad we didn't wait, because we wouldn't have been able to go. We would have been locked down and trip would have been history. So, but now it's history in a good way. I hope you enjoyed my story, sharing my memories of the cruise. Very quick little video, but that's all that's needed. Thanks so much for being here. Have a great weekend, and I'll catch you again soon. Bye.